Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, Ms. Duval and Ms. Humphries, thanks for your testimony. And I think all of us are just thinking there, but the grace of God, go, okay. No way should you feel inadequate or, these are very sophisticated criminals, and they are preying on people's emotions. They preyed on yours. And I find it totally understandable in terms of, how they took advantage of you. But I do have first couple of questions for you, Ms. Duval. So the $400 check that they sent you was just a fraudulent check as well, right?
Yes.
I mean, you deposited it in good faith. You thought the money went in there. It probably takes a while for the bank to get back to you and say, hey, this is no good. I mean, can you just fill me in on that first?
Yes, and in addition, it was a $2,400 check in total, and
So they send you two checks in, one for $400 and also the $2,000.
no, it all came into one check of $2,400, and it was all
Okay.
fictitious. Sorry, can you repeat the question again? The one that you just asked.
No, I'm just, so you got these checks.
Yeah.
And they look like valid checks to you. Mm-hmm. Did you take them physically, or did you do those? Did you also deposit those electronically?
I deposited those electronically. It gave me strict instructions to do mobile deposit only, and that's how they first came into my account. And whenever I first realized it was a scam, my bank was telling me that it takes them 5 to 7 days to realize the validity of a check. So it would appear in my account while still pending, but they would basically give me that money.
Right. So when did you find out that those checks were also fraudulent and you didn't have the $2,400? How many days did that take?
It was around, I believe, just 2 days or a day, because it wasn't myself that realized it. It was my mother seeing my account and realizing something weird was going on, and she called me and then made me realize that it was a scam. And this was before I was even in the deficit or they took the money out. I just knew I was scammed at that point, and then I filed a claim with two claims for the $400 and $2,000. Within that same hour, I realized, and then 3 days later, I was in a deficit.
Now, I don't believe you'd ever used Zelle before, right?
I used it maybe once or twice just for simple transactions with actual peers that I know and friends. It's for simple things like some food.
So why did you use it? Again, this isn't an accusatory thing, because I've never used these things. I know people who have, and I just never have. So why do people use these?
I believe just because of its quick pace in nature and how maybe effective it could go into the bank account, especially since it is bank affiliated directly. That's what it made me feel as if it was more trustworthy in that aspect.
Right. Yeah, so it's going through your bank, and you figure, okay.
Yeah, and especially for this situation, since I did think it was somebody from my school and they needed these research office supplies to send to me so I could use this for this research opportunity, that they would need it specifically in their bank, because Cash App can take some time to actually go into the bank. I think Venmo is the same way, a couple days or 3 days. So I think that whenever I was thinking about it, that if you could have that instantaneously, that would be okay, and that because it's also bank affiliated, that if it was not, that I could get that back easier.
And again, you're not thinking, because no consumer really thinks about the interchange fees or anything else like that. I mean, you're just simply not, a credit card wasn't available in this situation. They were telling you to use this direct payment, and you'd used it in the past, and you just really didn't question it at all.
I mean, I would say, I'm a bit confused in the way you said it, but because they sent a check, I thought, okay, this money's not my own.
It's covered, right?
Yeah, and they brought it to me so I could send it off to the sales representative.
No, again, they're very good at what they do.
Yeah.
So, Ms. Humphrey, maybe you can answer that question too. So you said you had used PayPal in the past, I think, right?
Yes, I use PayPal to buy things.
Yeah, turn your.
Right. Yes, I use PayPal to buy things, and I have bought some fraudulent things, and PayPal is very good about refunding my money. During COVID, I bought something, and it came back completely it wasn't what I purchased. And I told PayPal about it. They made me whole, and I sent the stuff back, and it was
So why do you
fine.
use PayPal rather than a credit card to purchase things? What, on Amazon, that type of thing?
Yeah, it was Amazon.
So why do you use PayPal versus credit cards?
Sometimes I use PayPal because I can cover my credit card number against the company that's making the purchase. So if I use PayPal, I don't have to put my Discover card into the place where it says make payment. So it's kind of a one-step, my understanding of it is it's one step away from giving some company I'm not familiar with my credit card number. I can give the company my PayPal account, and then the company gets its money from the PayPal account, and PayPal knows my account number. So I can keep my Discover or whatever card away from them.
Right, so
so
you have an account at PayPal.
Yes.
PayPal has access to your bank
That's
account.
correct.
And,
That's
okay,
correct.
so that makes
So
sense.
I offered that to this guy, and he wouldn't take it. Well, now I know why he wouldn't take it.
Right.
Because, hello, it wouldn't have
Yeah,
worked.
it was cheating you.
Yeah, but I use Zelle for my mother's caregivers, and I would have to pay them over and over and over again. And it always worked fine until this, and then I became very skeptical of it, and so I began to I'd send $1. Is this you? And they'd come back and say, yes, I got it. And then I would send them, the amount of money to cover. So it has changed my already heightened distrust of electronic payment, but to a whole new level.
No, listen, I think you're very responsible, and your rationale for using PayPal makes an awful lot of sense. Rather than give that, we do it, my wife does it, you're just kind of hoping.
Right.
But we do know with credit cards, if there's a fraudulent payment,
Correct.
they reimburse that. But again, they have hundreds of billions of dollars in profit off the interchange fees to make those payments. So I think I'll go to Ms. Hand right now because I want to understand.
Could I finish that
Go
little
ahead.
thought then? But that might be your thought on it, but mine as a consumer is I don't care about any of that stuff.
Oh, I understand.
I was working through Wells Fargo, which offered me a service, and so Wells Fargo should be backing up that service. And
Right.
the rest of that financial stuff, I don't care about that.
I completely understand that. I understand, you want to be made whole and.
Correct.
But again, I'm just looking at the overall business models of these things and, who has the wherewithal to make those reimbursements. And that's why I want to kind of get into these other systems because I want to compare them with Ms. Hand. Can you compare, what is the difference between PayPal, Venmo, and Zelle? Can you just kind of lay out what are the differences there? And speak as loud as possible.
Sure. So I think one of the things that you've heard from various testimony is the friction, both the presence of it and the absence of it. And so one of the things that is more absent in Zelle is that absence of friction.
Okay,
right?
so that's
It's
the use of it. So
instantaneous.
I want to,
Yeah,
I
but
want to
that
focus,
is a
I
part
want
of
to
the
focus on the
business
difference in
model.
the business model. Okay? So PayPal, how do they make money?
That's a really good question. How these companies make money is not part of our analysis. We test the consumer use
Okay.
of it.
Does anybody know the business model difference between PayPal, Venmo, and Zelle? Mr. Prevault.
So, Senator, what I understand about the business models is that Zelle is basically a service that the banks offer as a way to basically make their service more attractive, to make it stickier so that you get other services from the banks.
So the people don't use PayPal and Venmo.
So, right. If people
Do the banks view PayPal and Venmo as a competitor?
yes, they do.
Okay.
and so-
apparently the parent company, they claim they make no money off of Zelle whatsoever.
Right, and while that might be true that there's not sort of the same kind of fees they get off of interchange like they would in credit or debit, they do make money in other ways. For example, by using Zelle, it's a service that gets you to stay on your bank's website, for example, where you might
And that's
be-
why the banks use Zelle.
Right,
Right, okay.
Venmo and PayPal make money in other ways. So, for
So
example,
how do they make money other ways?
PayPal may make money off of, for example, charging you a fee if you want to send money to a business, for example, or if you want to, the money that are in people's PayPal's balances, they make money off the
So
investment.
they have compensating balances then.
By compensating balances, if you mean they're making money off the float on the balances, then yes.
So what float is there? I mean, do both PayPal and Venmo, do they allow their users to deposit money so it doesn't even have to go through a bank account?
That's right.
Okay, so they're making money like a bank does. They have deposits on hand. They don't pay interest on it probably, right?
on Venmo, not that I know of.
Yeah. So they've got this cash that they can go ahead and make money on themselves.
Right.
So that kind of funds it. Well, Zelle doesn't do that, right? I mean, Zelle is just basically a software program that banks use so that their banking customers stay on their platform. They don't take their money and deposit it into Venmo and PayPal. I mean, that's
Right,
kind of how I
yeah.
view this, right?
And there are other apps as well. There's a very popular one called Cash App where they're also you're incented to use your Cash App balance to do things like purchase cryptocurrency. So there are various P2P apps. They have various business models, but your understanding of how Zelle operates is I believe, correct.
Okay. Again, the reason I'm pointing this out is if let's say we want to pass a law, and I'm going to get to the law in terms of the Electronic Transfer Act, that is going to redefine unauthorized transactions, which I think is covered under that electronic, but I don't think fraud is. That's why Congresswoman Waters has this bill to include fraud. Somebody's going to have to pay for that. And the way you'd probably have to pay for that is Zelle or these other companies would probably have to charge fees so they have a amount of money to compensate people. There will be a certain percentage of fraud. There always will be. And so somehow somebody's going to have to pay. It's going to come out of somebody's hide, and my guess is then those services will have to charge some kind of slight transaction fee or whatever. But, Ms. Tater.
Senator, if I could just respond on that point.
Sure.
Right now that money is coming out of somebody's hide. It's coming out of the hide of consumers like the one sitting next to me.
Right.
And so whether that the fraud is happening and the money is being lost by somebody, our opinion is that those losses are best absorbed by the banks and those costs spread across their entire Zelle network rather than coming out of the pocketbooks.
And by the way, I completely agree, but it's how do you set up the system so it works? Ms. Tater, so why do you believe, because you said a couple times in your testimony that Zelle is not following the law, but again, I don't know what percent, they do reimburse for unauthorized use. And again, I don't know whether that comes out of Zelle, whether that comes out of the fees that Zelle charges the bank, and they do the calculation in terms of what percent of the transfers are unauthorized or they're going to have to reimburse. I mean, again, these people are smart. I mean, they keep track of these things. In what way is Zelle not following the law?
Senator, what I had said is that financial institutions routinely don't follow the law, and by that I mean the banks. I sue banks when they don't return the money to my consumers, and they routinely either don't do an investigation because they feel it's not covered under the Electronic Funds Transfer Act, or the investigations that they conduct are terrible.
Let's zero in on that. What is and what isn't covered? I mean, am I correct, as I've been briefed here, that unauthorized transaction is covered and they have to reimburse for that, which means they have to investigate. But if it's fraud, or if it's an authorized, and again, that's the problem with fraud. It's you were defrauded, crime was committed, but you authorized the transfer. So that, according to my briefing, is not covered under the Electronic Transfer Act, which is again why Congresswoman Waters has a bill that would include fraud covered under the Act. I mean, am I getting that wrong?
Not necessarily. So the term fraud's a little tricky. I think it's probably easier to think about it in terms of unauthorized transactions that a consumer's had a hand in by no fault of their own.
I got it, but I mean, what really scares certainly me is completely unauthorized, where people have access to your personal information and they have access to your checking account without knowledge whatsoever. You had no hand in it. I think that's actually pretty clear cut in terms of what's authorized or unauthorized. But then you have fraud that occurs and involves an authorized transaction. But I think Senator Marshall's ready here, so I'll let you go and I'll come back.
Okay, thank you, Senator Johnson.